All right, Floyd from Tennessee, David from California here, and we're going back to introduction to what's coming up here at Chattanooga on Thursday, the 2nd of November. It's called a Learn-a-thon, and it's focused on the Workday data model. And Floyd from Tennessee, it looks like you have a friend with you. Who do you have?
This is our dog Mick. He just came and sat in the chair next to me because he wanted to see what I was doing.
And he's going to help you out today.
That's the plan.
All right, so let's do no PowerPoint, just audio here, high level. What kind of what do you think is going to happen? Of course, we wing it mostly, but we also plan in advance. So, what's going to happen on Thursday in Chattanooga for the Workday Data Model Learn-a-thon?
Well, this is the first time we've attempted to do this, but what we're going to try to do is, we've in some of the questions and interactions with a lot of other people in the Workday community and other work areas, we've found cases where people may have been through classes and learned the mechanics of how to use certain tools, but not necessarily learn the concepts of how those things operate in the larger environment. So what we hope to do is to actually go through at a high level some of those concepts about the Workday data model, explaining some of the things that we have heard. And none of this is official training. It's just things that we have heard and observed, maybe even get refining thoughts from people in the audience that may have seen and heard additional things from other participants. But we want to talk about from the top down, what the data model is, how are there pieces of it that we as customers can't see, some of which are basically Workday owned totally, some of which are objects that may contain customer data, but they're not ones that have been exposed for reporting or calc field usage. And then other ones that have been exposed as business objects as opposed to classes for customer usage for things like reports, calc fields, discovery boards, etc. And then we want to go down from there and talk about all the different types of fields on those business objects, briefly touch on concepts of parent and child relationships, for lack of a better term, and some of the concepts of inheritance, that where a parent can inherit certain aspects down to its children. For example, David's going to talk about the fact that employees are a smaller subset or subclass of worker and how that interacts with each other.
Yeah, let's do worker is higher up. And so, what do all workers have in common? Like all workers have names, for example. Right? But every worker is either a contingent worker or an employee, right? So I think Floyd, I mean, and we've gone years helping people find the fields and understand what business objects are, but we have yet to really dive into what does it mean that a worker is either an employee or a contingent worker. And the example I usually give, Floyd, would be in classical computer science introductory classes that there are mammals in the world, and all mammals have hair. And so if you have a field on a mammal called hair color, it would be there for all mammals. So dogs, cats, dolphins are mammals. They all have hair, so they would all have hair color. But that's because they're inheriting that from mammal. Dog might have something specific like wags per minute. I mean, that's something dogs have specific to dogs. Cats, like, can they actually shake hands? Or, depending on how good are they at the retractable claws. Dolphins, well, how fast they could swim, perhaps. So let's do that with worker. There's something called worker type. And the worker type field tells you I'm an employee or I'm a contingent worker. But employees have types too. So it's not on the worker where it says employee type, it is on the employee. What's the employee type? And contingent worker has something that says, what's a contingent worker type? A contingent worker does not have the employee type field, just like the cat does not have the wags per minute. I mean, my cat sometimes, but typically not. It's when the cat's not happy, right? So just like the dog does not have anything about retractable claws, well, the employee object does not have anything in it about contingent worker type because it's not a contingent worker. Um, Now, Floyd, I'm hoping that that is, a level in which we could get people to understand that. And then I'm going to pass back to you to talk about something called action event. So
Yeah,
if action event is up here, how many different types of action events do we have?
well,
That's
and
something, yeah. I mean,
we're
could
gonna,
we try to explain it here in a quick recording? Or maybe it's going to take a whole day. I'm not sure.
yeah, we're not sure. Maybe just touch on the concept on Thursday. That'll probably have to be a much deeper dive at a later point in time. David and I are still not certain of all of the aspects of this, but that gets into a concept that has been discussed in the Workday community called super business objects that actually may be a collection of a whole lot of things under one business object that has all of the common fields such as action event. But when I went and looked, I think there was like in the last year in our tenant like 138 different types of business process events, all with their own unique fields that are go above and beyond the basic fields for action event. And so that becomes an interesting research thing when you're trying to report on those to decide how can you actually get to the extra fields uh, for that particular type of business process. So we're not going to necessarily have all the answers, but we want to talk about the concepts of that. And then one other thing I was going to mention related to what you were talking about earlier, David, that it makes a definite difference in, we've learned that by mistake up front, while the inheritance it's down, it's not up. So for example, calculated fields that you build on the business object of employee cannot be used on the business object of worker. However, calculated fields that you build on the business object of worker can be used on the subclass of employee if necessary. So we had originally built a number on employee and found that they were useless if you wanted to use them on a data source that was related to worker.
Okay, so that's fascinating to me, Floyd. Essentially, if you write calculated fields on the worker, then both contingent workers and employees have access to it. But if you write your calc field on the employee, because it's only for employees, it's not for contingent workers, but your report has a data source with a public, I mean, the 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 primary business object is actually the worker, not the employee. Then you're saying that those calc fields that are in the employee are not available. Do you have to put the calc field on the worker? Because that's the PBO of your report.
As a
Is that what
general
you're
rule,
saying?
as a general
Uh,
rule, that's correct. Or you have to obtain them by trying to attain them via lookup related value, which makes extra work.
okay, all right. So I'm learning something. What is it, Floyd? Over 16 years of Workday, right?
Just
For
about.
both of us. Yeah, maybe hitting 17. Okay, so we're both learning, right? We don't want everyone to feel like they're entering a learn-a-thon where it's one directional, right? We will all be learning. The teachers learn
Well, and
and
anything
the
we
students
will learn,
teach.
yeah, anything we learn, in the past is subject to change quite rapidly in the future. So as
Every
things
Friday.
change, all knowledge has a shelf life.
Okay, anything else we want to tell people? I know for sure people need to know that registration is required. Please just don't show up in Chattanooga and try to find us because you won't know where we are unless you register. And we got an email to you, customer Workday customers only. But yeah, what else as far as the agenda? Anything else, Floyd, that people should know before they register and buy a flight? We've had people say, "Wait, I didn't realize. Maybe I'll fly to Chattanooga just for this."
Yeah, we were going to kind of touch downstream of that into how those business object concepts then flow into report data sources, and talk a little bit about the different types of report data sources, and so some of the idiosyncrasies of each one of them, and why you might see so many different report data sources on the same business object for standard data sources, uh, as opposed to index data sources, and some of the things you can and can't do with index data sources that would affect your whether you choose to use them or not. And then we'll touch on different types of reports briefly, uh, maybe some research tools to let you determine what's out there, maybe even in GMS to look for some examples of those. And then we're going to talk briefly about calculated fields, and the different calc field functions that exist. And then also briefly, if we can fit it in, how that also relates to things like condition rules, and how different calculated fields, if properly authorized, can be used in other contexts like condition rules and benefits eligibility rules, compensation eligibility rules, etc.
All right, Floyd, let's end with a raise your W. Been doing that for years. See everybody Thursday in Chattanooga at our first ever Learn-a-thon. Right.